Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to try and make a hunting knife like this one I drew out of this piece of 80 CRV2 high carbon steel. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fire up the forge and start shaping out our knife. So this is a forced air propane forge. So we've got propane coming in and mixing with air from a blower down here. So we're just going to fire this up and start working. The first thing that we are going to do is we're going to start to forge the point of this knife on my Nimba 120-pound anvil, and I'm going to be using my 3-pound rounding hammer. What I like about this hammer is one side is flat for kind of smoothing out the finish on pieces, and the other face is very domed, so I can very aggressively move material where I want it to go. So once our steel comes up to a good working heat, which is going to be maybe a bright orange, I'm going to start to forge that tip to the right shape, and then I'll start to thin the material out and start creating a preform for the knife. This half is going to be the blade, this half is going to be the handle. So first we're going to make a set down here, isolate this material for the blade. Now I'm just going to go make a second isolation just a little bit in front of that other one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a bend in this knife. So now that we've bent this knife towards the edge, what we're going to do next is we're going to come over the edge of the anvil. I'm going to line my hammer right up with that corner right there. I'm going to hold the knife a little bit of an angle. I'm going to forge in there. I'm going to try and pinch that material right there and pull it out. There, see how that's being pinched out? Now I'm just going to forge all the way down the edge. Give it a nice brush. That's just going to clean all that scale off there. Then I'll just take my touch mark where I want it. There we go. Now I've got the knife forged, it's all straightened. I'm going to do 3 normalizing cycles. The first cycle I do is probably going to be somewhere close to 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. And the second cycle I do might be closer to 1500. And the third would probably be closer to like 1400. And each time I'm going to let it just slowly cool, just in the air. So, to grind this knife, we're going to be using my 2x72-inch belt grinder. We're going to start off with a fairly coarse, worn 36 grit belt. And we're going to use this to establish the profile of the knife, to flatten the sides of the tang, and to grind in the bevels. Tools like this generate a lot of dust, so it's important to have a good mask. Also, hearing protection. It's very important to listen to good music while you're working with tools like this. I recommend hard rock, but metal and punk will work too. Make sure not to listen to any inferior music, or you're going to have to deal with serious hearing loss. how I'm going to grind these bevels in is I'm going to do this completely freehand by eye. I use this hand to support and this hand to kind of guide it. I grind at this steeper angle on both sides until I have my edge thickness set, and then I slowly work that bevel back, slowly decreasing the angle, cutting in a new plane each time to bring that grind back higher and higher. I'm not going to grind it all the way yet. I'm just going to get the bevels kind of started. I'll finish grinding the blade after I harden and temper it. We have to drill our pinholes in the tang before we harden the knife, just because otherwise there'd be a possibility of the steel being too hard for us to drill. So, just going to take a center punch and mark out all our holes. Now we're going to use the drill press to drill out these holes. These 4 are going to be 1/8 inch holes for 1/8 inch pins, and this last one is going to be a 1/4 inch hole for a 1/4 inch lanyard tube. Now I got the knife in the vise. This is the last step we've got to do before heat treatment. And I'm just going to file down and make that sharpening notch. Now we're going to take our knife and we're going to slowly bring it up to temperature. We're going to try and go for about 1500 degrees, and we're going to be able to quench it in oil to harden the steel. So I'm going to bring it up to temperature, tang first, just so that I don't overheat the tip. And then once I've got some heat in the tang, I'll turn it around and start heating up the other side. Now that we've hardened this knife, the next step is to temper it. Right now the steel has a whole bunch of stress in it from the quench, and it also is too hard to make a good knife. It would be too brittle. So now when we temper it, it's going to make it a little bit softer so that it's a little tougher, and it's also going to relieve some of the stress from the quench. I'm going to give this knife 2 cycles in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour and a half. This should leave us with a nice hard blade, but not one that's too hard that could chip or break. So our blade just got out of its 2 tempering cycles in the oven. Now we're going to start grinding again. I've got a nice fresh 60 grit belt on here, and we're going to just grind those bevels in almost to the right thickness I want. And then I'm going to move up to a 120 grit belt, and then a 220 grit belt, and then I'm going to go up to 400 and 800 grit using Trizact belts. Now that our blade is at an 800 grit finish off the belt, I'm going to hand sand it at 500 grit. For the handle on this knife, we're going to use 2 different materials. The front part of the handle is going to be made out of this milo wood. This other material is suretouch. It's alternating layers of G10 and rubber. Now I have to go to the drill press, drill out these holes on these pieces so that they always line up the same way. And then I can stick them together, grind the front angle here, and then I can take these pieces of the wood and make those match that angle. We've got our pieces here, so I've just got a little bit of epoxy mixed up, and we're just going to glue this up. Just a little epoxy on there. Alright, so our epoxy is cured. I got the blade taped up just so you don't scratch it. Now I've got to chop these pins off. So we're just going to lock it in the vise. Now I've just got a fairly fresh 36 grit belt on here. We're going to get this handle rough shaped, and then we're going to run it up through the grits, polish it out. Alright, here's our knife all finished up. The handle is G10 and rubber and stabilized Hawaiian milo wood. And I think that combination turned out real nice. Got stainless steel pins and a lanyard tube. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Make sure to subscribe so you can see me on the next video. Thank you for watching.